So, I'm going to start with perhaps almost a sense of wonder at technology, and I've got a piece of it in my hand, and you're looking at various devices around the room. But isn't it amazing? I mean, now you can research ideas, you can share those ideas with other people all around the world. You can listen to music, you can read what others have written, you can watch movies, you can find out exactly where you are within roughly 1 square metre. I can monitor my heart rate, I can spy on my kids, I can check my finances, I can stimulate my brain with puzzles, and so on. All of that in one single handheld device. Technology is impressive, isn't it? Well, I want to ask you 3 questions. The first is, where did technology come from? And I suppose the answer to that is perhaps, went too quickly then. Fairly obvious. It came from smart people, didn't it? Men and women who had vision and intelligence and skills. In the case of the iPhone, Steve Jobs is perhaps the man attributed with having had the foresight to come up with the idea of a smartphone. But arguably he was building on the shoulders of giants. I thought we'd have a little quiz. Don't worry, it's not too hard. But there I've put just sort of one strand, if you like, one branch of technology. And your part in this is to try and work out or remember when. Some of you in the room are probably old enough to remember when these things came along. So electricity. Anyone like to hazard a guess when electricity was invented? Faraday. Go on, Andrew.
18, I can't remember.
Late 19th century.
Late 19th century.
1870.
1752, would you believe?
Oh,
yes,
wow.
so a little bit before perhaps than we thought.
That's shocking.
What about the first computer, which probably was about the size of this hall when it first happened? First computer?
1950s.
1822.
Ooh.
Yes, impressive. Like I said, it was big, and it probably wasn't very computery at the start. The microchip.
Oh, that was
70s.
Late 1970s.
1958. So yeah, we're within 20 years. Then we got a bit closer. The personal computer.
1982.
Ooh,
No,
close, Phil.
1970.
You're getting closer. Now we got within 10 years or 9 years. 1973. The World Wide Web.
1990.
Oh,
Something.
Yes.
Mary.
1990. Very good. Oh, spot on. And last of all, the iPhone.
Steve Jobs, that was 1990 something.
Oh.
Bit more recent.
Late 90s.
93.
Oh, it's the iPhone.
2007.
Yes.
The iPhone.
Yeah, I was thinking of just ordinary phones. Yeah.
Well, if nothing else, we've established you all need to review your history. But there we are. And of course, you can trace that back, can't you? So iPhones work on batteries. Batteries require charging. Charging requires chips and so on, and power. So that's just one example and one idea of technology. Of course, that's where that particular branch of technology came from. We could have looked at telecommunications or the automotive industry or pharmaceuticals. There's so much, isn't there, technology in the world in which we live. But again, let's think more broadly for a moment, and perhaps slightly more philosophically. Who allowed human beings to have that ability to design and create and think? With our understanding of the world, and particularly with our focus on the Bible, there's a power behind the power, isn't there, that's in control of all this. And that's something we'll come back to in a moment. All right, second question. Is technology good or bad? Well, yes, I mean, on the one hand, you say it's good, isn't it? I mean, all this stuff that saves us time, makes our lives easier, helps us do jobs that are difficult to do, probably more accurately than might be able to do them ourselves, saving us money and so on. But on the other hand, then, you know, what about guns or tanks or missiles? They're not so good. What about hackers and techno-crime and cyber... Scammers, that's right, cyberbullying and scams and online gambling. Those things are not so good, are they? They're bad. Of course, technology doesn't operate, in a sense, on its own. A machine wouldn't exist except for someone behind it who designed it and programmed it and perhaps even has to maintain it. And lastly, and again, somewhat of a deeper question, do we look to technology to save us? Do we put our faith in technology? Do we think technology has the answers to the world's challenges and problems? All right, well, let's think about it from the other angle then. As Andy said, we're thinking about God and technology and the Bible. And those two things seem almost diametrically opposed, don't they? They seem like they don't have anything in common. Surely a modern topic like technology has nothing to do with an ancient book like the Bible or with the God of heaven and earth that we believe in. Well, it might surprise you to learn that technology originally comes from a Bible or two Bible words, at least two Greek words that we find in the Bible. So the word tech originally was from the Greek tekton, or tectone. And you'll find that in Matthew chapter 13 and other places. But it's that word, I put it in red for you, carpenter. When Jesus had finished these parables, he went from there, coming to his hometown. He taught them in their synagogue, and they were astonished and said, "Where did this man get this wisdom and these mighty works? Is not this the tekton, or the son of the tekton, the carpenter's son?" So in fact, Jesus was a techie, we might say. Different kind of technology, of course. He was a craftsman, no doubt trained by his stepfather, or his stepfather Joseph. But he trained and he learned, perhaps as an apprentice and then in his own right. And he used the technology of his day. He would have had tools that enabled him to craft and build things out of wood. What about the other half of the word? Well, the logi. So we've had techno, and then the logi is really from the Greek word logos. And those of you who are Bible readers might be familiar with that word. It's the word for word. And perhaps the most famous use of it is found in John's Gospel. In the beginning was the logos, the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God, or was divine. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him. Without him was not anything made that was made. So, tectone and logos, the technology. So, in a sense then, all technology comes, doesn't it, from God. Now, we're not saying that God has invented it all, but God has allowed men and women to do whatever it is that they have imagined to do. Not only that, but of course God has allowed the discovery of the materials required in technology. All the things that are made come, don't they, ultimately, you can track them back to some of the earth's resources. And where did they come from? Of course, from the creation that God put in place. So there's nothing that we discover or that we mine or that we manufacture that is outside of God's control. Sometimes we think, God must be surprised by these things. But of course, that's not true, is it? God is aware and all-seeing, all-knowing of these things, even though we perhaps think that we're very clever when stuff comes along. And secondly, technology then is found or derived from two Bible words that are put together. Now, of course, the world is constantly changing. So technology has changed. Andy said to me before we got up, so I thought you were going to talk about asphalt. Well, of course, to the man on the horse, the wheel was technology, wasn't it, when it first came along? In fact, someone talk about, reinventing the wheel. So once upon a time, that was an advancement in technology. And the temptation is to sort of look back almost a little condescendingly as time moves on and as people's abilities and skills and knowledge moves on. We think we're cleverer, don't we, than the previous generations, and that we've discovered things that they couldn't have ever dreamed of. And when you look at the smartphone and so on, I mean, you can sort of understand why. The danger is that we then think that we're the smartest. It's what C.S. Lewis called chronological snobbery. As advanced as we are, though, here in what are we, 2025? Again, the fact is, God doesn't need our blogs or our biometrics or our bitcoins. So again, when we're thinking about this, then again we need to see it as it were in the context of God's plan and purpose. So we're going to think about a couple of stories, of things in the Bible, real events, but from this sort of lens, this view of technology, and see what we can learn from that. Because, as I say, you could pick any point in time and talk about technology, but we're going to think particularly about the technology that we find in the Bible. So to do that, I'd like you to come to Genesis, please, and initially chapter 4. Because here are the original techies. These are the grand or the great-great-grandfathers of tech. We meet them in Genesis chapter 4. Verse 19. Lamech, who is a descendant of Cain, Cain and Abel, you might remember, famous set of brothers from the original humans, Adam and Eve. Well, Lamech, descendant of Cain, took him 2 wives. The name of the one was Adar, and the name of the other Zillah. And Adar bare Jabal. He was the father of such as dwell in tents, and of such as have cattle. So he was the sort of grandfather, the discoverer of farming, and those who lived in tents. So they were sort of somewhat of a nomadic lifestyle. So he was what you might think of as a ranchman, perhaps. Then his brother's name was Jubal. He was the father of all such as handled the harp and the organ. So there's our music. He was able to craft and create instruments, and again discovered music of sorts. And then Zillah, she also bare Tubal-Cain, an instructor of every artificer, in brass and iron. And the sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. So we've got the engineering side of things, haven't we, there? Some, I think, versions have a forger, so a sort of a smith of sorts in brass and iron. So metalwork coming to the fore there. So there, as I say, there's the original people of tech. But at some point, technology stops being a tool, a useful implement or a piece of equipment, and it can almost become more than that, can't it? And here are the dangers of tech. And I'd like you to come to Isaiah for a moment. We'll come back to the reading we had in Genesis, but Isaiah and chapter 44. So technology starts off with the premise that you're using it, and as we say, it starts off as something you hope is useful, but at some point perhaps there's a danger that it becomes more than that, and that actually it starts using you. And that's really what Isaiah was talking about. And what's interesting is the way Isaiah presents his argument is very much in the context of technology and manufacturing. So Isaiah 44 and verse 10. Who hath formed a god or molten a graven image that is profitable for nothing. Behold, all his fellows shall be ashamed, and the workmen they are of men. Let them all be gathered together, let them stand up, yet they shall fear, and they shall be ashamed together. The smith with the tongs both worketh in the coals, and fashioneth it with hammers, and worketh it with the strength of his arms. Yea, he is hungry, and his strength faileth. He drinks no water, and is faint. The carpenter stretches out his rule. He marketh it with a line. He fitteth it with planes. He marketh it out with a compass, and maketh it after the figure of a man, according to the beauty of a man, that it may remain in the house. He heweth him down cedars, and taketh the cypress and the oak, which he strengtheneth for himself among the trees of the forest. He plants an ash, and the rain doth nourish it. Then shall it be for a man to burn, for he will take thereof and warm himself. Yea, he kindles it and bakes bread. Yea, he makes a god and worships it. He maketh it into a graven image and falls down thereto. He burneth part thereof in the fire. With part thereof he eateth flesh. He roasteth roast and is satisfied. He warms himself and says, Aha, I am warm, I have seen the fire. And the residue thereof he makes a god, even his graven image. He falleth down unto it and worshippeth it, and prayeth to it, and saith, Deliver me, for thou art my God. So that's an interesting process, isn't it, that's described there. And although Isaiah was talking about the process of idolatry and how their statues, their idols were brought into being, you could just as easily apply that to the phone or to any number of things that are made. Starts off, doesn't it, by gathering the raw materials, whether it's wood, the oak and the cypress tree were mentioned, or perhaps it's metal, some sort of titanium or steel or whatever. And then someone has to go about bashing it, getting it into shape. So we talked about the smith with his tongs and his hammer, and he was working and hard, slaving away, and he was tired. And then there was someone in design, wasn't there, marking it out with a ruler and a pencil, and someone else with a compass. It was talking about. But then at some point they started to put their trust in this thing. So they shaped it, and you can have all different shapes, can't you? You can make it into into the figure of a man or something else that's beautiful. And then they prayed to it, and they asked it to save them, to deliver them. And you can see, can't you, now where we've moved from something, as we said, which is perhaps useful, which has a purpose, to now it's using us. We're serving it rather than it serving us. Turn over the page to chapter 46. Now God draws their attention to particular idols. So he names a couple of the idols that were prevalent in Babylon. Chapter 46 of Isaiah, verse 1, Bel boweth down, Nebo stoopeth. Their idols were upon the beasts and upon the cattle. Your carriages were heavy laden, they are a burden to the weary beast. They stoop, they bow down together. They could not deliver the burden, but themselves are gone into captivity. So here's the irony. Even though they were praying to these things and believing in these things, they still had to be carried about. They couldn't carry themselves. You had to put it on the back of a donkey or an ox or something and have it carted about for you. And so God says, Hearken to me, verse 3, O house of Jacob, and all the remnant of the house of Israel, which are born by me from the belly, which are carried from the womb. Even to your old age I am he, even to hoar hairs will I carry you. I have made, and I will bear, even I will carry and will deliver you. To whom will you liken me, and make me equal, and compare me, that we may be like? So, as we said, the irony that they made these idols, they manufactured them, they paid good money for them, they took them back to their house, but they were lifeless. They couldn't offer them anything. They had to be lifted up themselves. And God says, but in contrast, I'm the one who's been carrying you. Since you were born, I've been looking after you. And you know, I've carried you. And so it begs the question, doesn't it? And in fact, if God's really giving them a choice, isn't it? Do you want a God that you have to carry about? Or do you want a God who is real and who carries you? And God asks that rhetorical question in verse 5, doesn't he? Who will you compare or liken me? And the answer is there is none, is there? There's no one else like God. In fact, verse 9 of this chapter, remember the former things of old. I am God, there is none else. I am God, there is none like me. And so Paul, thinking about these things years or centuries later, said to the the believers in Rome, professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. They changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like to corruptible man and to birds and beasts and creeping things. They changed the truth of God into a lie, and they worshipped and served the creature more than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. So we've swapped the creative God, the God who can put all these things into being, for that which is made, which is manufactured. And dare I say it, that's the problem, isn't it? So many people think of this as their life. They carry it around in their pocket and they look for it, for all the answers. I was describing at the start how many things this can do for me, from my finances to my entertainment, to my emails and communication and so on. And the danger is then I get sucked into, this is my life, and if I lose it, well, goodness, what a terrible thing that would be. And we forget, perhaps, in context, who is really in control and where the answers to life really belong and come from. Well, with that in mind, come back to Genesis chapter 11, please, and the reading that we had with Andy. And it's another example, isn't it, of human technology. Again, something that man, or men and women, made. It's a well-known story, and you might well have heard of the Tower of Babel. That was the reading we had from Genesis 11. And there's an interesting sort of process going on, isn't there? And I summarised it in 3 P's. So the first is pride, the second is purpose, and the third is power. And that's what's going on here. So they had an objective, didn't they? And it was a rather lofty one. So verse 4, they said, "Go to, let us build us a city and a tower whose top may reach to heaven. Let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth." So they're quite lofty in their ambition. They're quite proud, aren't they? That they're going to build not just any city and tower, but the tallest you've ever seen. It's going to reach all the way to heaven. And there's a reason for this. So they have a purpose, that they can avoid being scattered abroad. And it seems to me the context to this is in fact the previous story in our Bibles of the flood. So the flood, of course, was God's judgment on the world, the men and women of that day and generation. And so to avoid that ever happening again, to avoid being destroyed and scattered, their objective is to build something so tall that it can avoid the floods and the rain that had, as it were, beaten them and overcome them last time. I suspect that's at least in part what's there behind their statement in verse 4. Well, the irony is they did not succeed. Verse 5, the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men builded. So they didn't even get close, did they, to heaven, as was their claim. So God, of course, who is in the heavens, is pictured as coming down to have to see what's going on. And I think there's a bit of sort of satire there in that statement. That they had their lofty ambitions, but actually then God comes down to see what's going on. And the Lord said, "Behold, the people is one." This is verse 6. "They all have one language. This they begin to do. Now nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech." So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. So, God found a way, didn't he, to thwart their ambition and to undermine their pride. And he did so by just tinkering and altering their communication or their ability to communicate. So at the time they all spoke one language, and so God so cleverly and yet so subtly just tweaked that, didn't he? And suddenly they can't understand one another. And we're still wrestling with these challenges today, aren't we? If you've ever travelled abroad or had dealings with people from another country, translation and communication is at the heart of so much, and the challenge of being understood by those who perhaps don't talk English. And in verse 8 then, the very thing they feared, the very thing they were trying to avoid, happened to them. So their objective was to build a tower so that they could avoid being scattered. Well, in verse 8, God in fact achieved that. He scattered them abroad. So the purpose that they set out with was unsuccessful. They thought they were powerful. They thought that they had the technology of their day in making bricks and building. And it's been suggested that perhaps there was more to this. It wasn't just any old block of flats or tower. It was probably a ziggurat, something that was associated with false worship. So again, another reason for this to be destroyed. They were trying to instigate worship to another deity. Well, technology has lofty ambitions, but in the light of this story, it can't achieve them. And I was chatting to Phil in the break about, we live now in an age of artificial intelligence. That's how far we've sort of come in our journey and our advancement. And the danger is, that people ascribe, again, thought and intelligence to machines. Of course, the name betrays the challenge with that is it's not real. It's artificial. And although machines can learn, they do so within certain parameters, and it needs rules, it needs algorithms, it needs code, it needs a power source. All these things they can't, despite what the films tell you, they can't operate entirely on their own, and it doesn't take much. If you remember the news headlines from a few weeks ago, it doesn't take much, does it, for things to go wrong? Heathrow shut down by a fire in a local substation, and plenty of other things like that, where God is able to thwart the technology of man with something that happens just naturally, that the forces of nature. And for all its amazing, I suppose, advances, technology hasn't conquered death or created life. Certainly, of course, technology can preserve and extend life, and we're thankful, aren't we, for again, medical science and what doctors can do. But we haven't, as it were, stopped people from dying, nor have we found the ability to create life outside of the way humans can reproduce. And so again, we ask, at what cost technology comes about. Well, here's a verse from the last book of the Bible, having looked at Genesis all the way then in Revelation. Here's where technology, in a sense, is headed, and the spoiler alert, it's doomed. So the quote from Revelation chapter 18 says that there would be no craftsman of whatsoever craft he be. So no matter what your branch or strand of technology, eventually they will be no more. So Babylon, which is sort of the final fulfillment and epitome of where Babel started. Babylon here is pictured as being destroyed and thrown down. And so all the technology, all the craftsmen will not be found anymore, the verse says in Revelation. The light of a candle shall shine no more, the voice of the bridegroom and the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. Thy merchants were the great men of the earth, by thy sorceries. And it's not as you might think of wizardry and magic, but really pharmaceutical is the idea of the sorceries there, that the chemical or apothecaries. By thy sorceries were all nations deceived. In her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all that were slain upon the earth. So technology will eventually come to an end. As amazing and as incredible as it is, it won't last forever. And perhaps we overlook sometimes that the price of technology, that the sacrifice of the lives that contribute to technology's success, often that's overlooked, I think. But the slave and child labour that goes on in so many places, the impact to homes and communities and economies, the ecological effect on the planet. So much draining of the world's natural resources, and again these things are, as I say, sort of swept aside or covered up in the name of the advancement and the output of the technology, but it comes at a cost. And again, something else we perhaps don't like to think about or aren't always aware of is that technology is changing us. It's changing us psychologically, but also physiologically. So the scientists tell us that our bodies have started to respond to technology, and not in a good way. So quite recently, we now have something called PVS, phantom vibration syndrome. That's where you think your phone's gone off, you feel a twitch or something in your leg, and you're so attuned now that you think someone's contacted you, and then, oh no, they haven't. But your body, and this is real, I mean, I've actually felt it myself, you think someone's texted you or sent you an email, and you feel what you think is a vibration, but actually it's phantom. And that's again because of the way our bodies have learned to sort of be triggered by alerts. There's something called nomophobia. People go out and forget to take their phone with them, and they spend the entire period of being out worrying that someone's trying to get hold of them, and they don't have their phone. They might miss something, or some important again bit of news. I have to tell my kids that we did used to manage without phones once upon a time. And the other one, or ADD, you've probably heard of that one, that's been around a little bit longer. But again, the increase in ADD and ADHD, scientists tell us, is significant over the last sort of 5 to 10 years. Again, because of social media and because of devices. If I tell you that our attention span is down to 8 seconds now, the average attention span of humans, and the reason that's worrying is because the average attention span of a goldfish is 11 seconds. We're losing to goldfish, can you believe? That's the challenge we're up against. Not only that, but technology is actually starting to drive us apart. When it was first invented, people went to the movie theatre as sort of something you did together, or the family gathered around the wireless, or I suppose later the television, and it was something you did as a group. It was something that brought you together. Now, with the invention of devices, you're all in your own room watching, whatever program you want to watch, or you stream content whenever you want to. You don't have to watch it when it's broadcast. Or you see so many people with their headphones in, listening to their own music. No one chats on the bus anymore. They're all plugged in to their own device. And so we're being isolated. We're being separated by things that originally were intended to bring us together. Oh, my laptop seems to have frozen. Technology, you see. We're addicted to distraction. There we are. We're becoming isolated. And there's a darker side still. Not so social is what I called it. The number of young people surveyed who said that they were addicted now to social media, 40% and I can't remember the amount of people, it was a fairly high number that were surveyed. So 40% said that they were addicted to either Facebook or TikTok or YouTube or Snapchat, those sort of applications. People under 40, 26%, so a quarter of people under 40, again of those surveyed, said that they were actually lonely, even though they were using something that was supposed to connect them with others. And perhaps the most scary of all, the number of mental health issues caused by social media. 64% of teenagers admitted, and of course that's only the ones who admitted it, others maybe didn't want to share, but 64% said that they felt anxiety, 56% said they were depressed, 49% had some challenges with body image, again because of social media and what people shared or what other people posted. 20% were self-harming and 10% suicide. Those are some fairly dark statistics, aren't they? And we've even coined a phrase, FOMO, fear of missing out. We've almost become dissatisfied with our own lives because we think other people's is better. We can be jealous, can't we, when we see others posting about their holidays or their, whatever it is they're doing. Of course, we conveniently forget that's not necessarily a full reflection of all their life. It's just the bit they wanted to share with you. But that's the danger, isn't it? It leads to dissatisfaction, and it feeds the bit of our brains and so on that makes us discontent and unthankful. So how do we break out of that? How do we avoid these things again as believers in the Lord Jesus Christ, as Bible readers? Well, the answer is quite simple, isn't it? It's to take a break. It's to look up literally from our screens, but to look up, because the answer doesn't lie in this world and in what this world can make and manufacture. The answer lies, doesn't it, in heaven. God has given us his word and has taught us about friendships and relationships and how we're meant to interact and communicate with one another. And even the experts now talk about a digital Sabbath, about the wisdom of taking a break, of having a day or two off from your laptop or your phone or whatever it is. So giving yourself a break from our screens and so on, unplug. And so again, there is definitely common sense to these things. We're not meant to be 24/7 plugged in. And so I'm finishing with a verse from one of the Psalms. God has given us so much, hasn't he, to look forward to. And no doubt you've heard other Bible talks on the subject of the return of the Lord Jesus and the kingdom of God. But for now, in this life, we can take confidence and hope in what God is doing, that he is in control, that there is nothing that is outside of his plan and purpose. And if we just take time to be still and appreciate his presence in our lives, be still and know that I am God. Thank you.